To go ahead and talk about this further, the global impacts that is in the presidential election, let's go ahead and bring in Jamil Jaffer. He is the founder of the National Security Institute at George Mason University and former senior advisor to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Jamil, thank you so much for joining us. Well, former President Trump's running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, brushing off Trump's comments on Russian President Putin and the Chinese president. Let's take a listen.
President Trump said Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi were lovely individuals when he was speaking in Montana last night. You agree with that characterization?
I think that President Trump gets along with world leaders, and there's nothing wrong with him complimenting them as people if it makes him more effective diplomatically. And there's an irony here.
That's different than walking in and laying down the law to Xi Jinping.
Oh, no, it's not actually, because you're better able to lay down the law like President Trump did if you actually have a good relationship with people and they trust you to follow your word.
So what is your reaction to that?
Well, look, obviously, I don't think President Trump is right that President Xi or Putin are lovely people. At the same time, Senator Vance makes a reasonable point that you want to build relationships and trying to demonstrate that you're effective. And so if President Trump means it and says he's going to go after Putin or Xi and then actually does it, which to be fair to him, during his presidency, he was very aggressive against China. Then that'll be successful. But as a general matter, referring to people who are invading other countries, threatening our allies like Taiwan, I'm not trying to call them lovely people.
Vance has made it very clear he does not support giving more aid to Ukraine. How could a Trump reelection impact the war in Ukraine?
Well, it certainly could have a huge impact. President Trump has said that he'll end the war in Ukraine even before he takes office if he's elected. What that presumably means is that he'll demonstrate very clearly to Ukraine that he'll either withdraw aid to them or double down on aid in an effort to get Russia to negotiate. What he's appeared to suggest is that he'll withdraw that aid. That appears to also be where Senator Vance is. But we'll see with this new intervention in Kursk. It does appear that Ukraine is taking back some of the advantage that they had lost in this frozen conflict. So if, in fact, Ukraine is becoming successful and is successful in this incursion into Russia, it may be that either president elected, whether Kamala Harris or President Trump, may actually be interested in doubling down on Ukraine's success.
I do want to go ahead and show you this because Vice President Kamala Harris, she's responded to questions about the Israeli strike that killed at least 80 people. Let's take a listen.
Yet again, there are far too many civilians who've been killed. I mean, Israel has a right to go after the terrorists that are Hamas. But as I have said many, many times, they also have, I believe, an important responsibility to avoid civilian casualties. We need to get the hostages out. We need a hostage deal, and we need a ceasefire. And I can't stress that strongly enough. It needs to get done. The deal needs to get done, and it needs to get done now.
So what impact does this election have on a ceasefire?
Well, look, obviously, everybody wants to see peace or return to the Middle East. But, we have to account for the fact that until Hamas as a terrorist group is destroyed and put out of commission, Israel is not, and as the United States wouldn't stop going after them. We didn't stop going after al-Qaeda until we had taken them to pieces, taken out their two key leaders, both Ayman al-Zawahiri and Osama bin Laden. And the same is going to be true for Israel, given the nature and scale of the attack that took place on October 7th of last year. So no question we should call for a ceasefire, seek that. But at the end of the way, the same way to get a ceasefire in Ukraine, with Ukraine and Russia, is the same with Israel and Hamas, which is to give our allies the ability to take out those that have attacked them. In the case of Hamas and Israel, it's Hamas. And in the case of Russia, Ukraine, it's Russia.
Let's focus on Israel, Hamas, and definitely Hezbollah as well. We know that tensions are reaching a boiling point along Israel-Lebanon border. How big of a threat is Hezbollah?
Well, it's obviously a huge threat. Hezbollah is a much more capable terrorist group than Hamas ever has been. And you saw the attack that Hamas pulled off. Hezbollah also has the advantage of having long been backed by Iran, which Hamas has gotten more recent support from. The common denominator here, of course, though, in this Hezbollah-Hamas dynamic against Israel is Iran. And until we start making Iran pay the price directly, both the United States, our allies, and Israel, it's unlikely that either Hamas or Hezbollah is going to stop their attacks on our allies and our friends in the Middle East. You see it happening with the Houthis in Yemen and the Red Sea as well. Iran is behind all those things. They have to pay the price.
Trump has made calls that he thinks we should get out of NATO. Do you think we should? What are your thoughts on that?
No, there's no question. Yeah, no, look, Kelsey, there's no question the NATO alliance is the strongest thing in the world. It benefits the United States dramatically. It's to our advantage to remain in NATO. Now, sure, NATO allies pick up some of the burden and pay the commitment that they've made, which is 2% of their GDP? Absolutely they should. But saying things like we should get out of NATO or not support our allies when they're attacked by enemy nation states like Russia is just silly. It's wrong. If it's a tactic to get our allies to pay up, okay. But at the end of the day, it's not the right kind of thing to do. It's not the right thing for the U.S. to do. And leaders, whether it's Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, or J.D. Vance, shouldn't be saying things like that.
Yeah, but you do have leaders on the fence saying, hey, we're spending too much money, sending too much money to these other wars in other countries. I do want to talk about this. So Vance served in the Marine Corps and was deployed to Iraq. Well, Waltz, if we talk about him, he served in the Army National Guard for 24 years. Do you think that their military background and armed forces background is going to influence foreign policy?
Well, I do think that. I mean, I think anytime you serve in the military, I think it does give you a sense of understanding how our fighters are doing out there, how our war fighters are there on the field. You may have different takeaways when it comes down to it, but at the end of the day, I do think that experience is valuable. We have record low numbers of veterans in Congress. That, I think, has caused us to have a reactive instead of a proactive foreign policy. I think there's an advantage to having veterans in office, whether that's in Congress or in the administration. And, when it comes to spending money on foreign wars, the reality is the bulk of the money we're spending on both the wars between Israel and Hamas and in Russia, Ukraine is actually being spent here in the United States on American weaponry, American jobs, American workers that ultimately, yes, are being sent to those fights to fight our adversaries, Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, and Russia. But ultimately, money is actually being spent mostly here in the U.S.
All right. Founder of the National Security Institute, Jamil Jaffer, thank you.